Hello, beautiful, and welcome to this masterclass where we are going to explore the divine feminine and the divine masculine within the gene keys, the being and the becoming. I have some slides for this. Let's make this full screen. Amazing. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everyone that is on the replay as well. You can comment, ask questions, pretend that you are here live. I would absolutely love to hear from you. And if you want to take a screenshot or a picture and share on your Instagram story that you're here watching and tag me, I would love to thank you for being here, and I will reshare your post as well. Feel free to share any insights or anything that you got out of this as well. Okay, so let's get into just a little bit of an introduction to who I am before we dive into all things feminine and masculine within the Gene Keys. So my name is Rachel White. If we haven't met yet, I'm a coach, author, speaker, podcaster, and a Gene Keys guide. And I work with women to really expand their experience of their creative power and to also guide them into this deep exploration of their own depth, their cosmic coding within the Gene Keys, their creative power, and all the ways that their depth and creativity ripple out into the world in their being, in their work, in their service, in their prosperity, and all of those things. I have been coaching since 2016, and since then, I've always been someone really fascinated with personality types, like the 16 personality types, love languages, all these things that you take these quizzes to find out which category you fit into. I've always been really fascinated with exploring differences between people and getting to know more about myself as well through those type of things. And I've also been playing with polarity and divine feminine pretty much since 2016 in various ways, and my exploration of the feminine has only really deepened and expanded and taken many different facets since then. I started playing with the Gene Keys personally in 2020, where I did a lot of self-inquiry, self-exploration. I worked with some people for my Gene Keys, and then around mid 2021 is when I really felt called just to go even deeper into the entire transmission. And I did my Gene Keys guide program. I did all the other programs that were needed. And I entered into this deep study for the entire transmission. And I would say I still spend around probably around 5 to 10 hours a week studying and exploring different aspects of the Gene Keys, because I just love this transmission so much. A little insight into what the Gene Keys are, especially if this is one of your first explorations with the Gene Keys, or even if you've been exploring the Gene Keys for a while. The way I explain it may just offer a new insight or a new perspective for you. Very briefly, the Gene Keys is a transmission detailing the 64 story codes of humanity's evolution. And I also have an entire masterclass. It's about an hour long that dives into just an introduction for what the Gene Keys are. So if you want that as a foundation before you come back to this, just send me a message and I can send you the link to that. So each of the 64 story codes, or the 64 archetypes within the Gene Keys transmission, are made up of 6 different lines. And each of those 6 lines is either a pure masculine line or a pure feminine line. And with those 6 lines, when the masculine and feminine are combined, it comes up with 64 different variations. And those 64 different variations are the 64 archetypes, or the 64 story codes. And I'll show you on the next slide what I mean by those lines if you're not following, and what they look like, and how you can see the makeup of between feminine and masculine with the Gene Keys that you have in your profile as well. Each of these 64 story codes, or the 64 Gene Keys, have a city, a gift, and a shadow. The city is the divine fractal line. So if you imagine source energy at the beginning of the universe, at the beginning of our collective's storyline, the storyline of humanity, Source broke up into 64 different fractals, into a 64-part matrix. So each of the cities is the direct fractal from source energy. It is the divine gift that we get to channel into the world through our gifts. So our gifts are the divine manifested into action through us, into matter, into the material world. And then the shadow is the distortion. And each of these 64 archetypes go through this story code of coming down, like breaking off as a fractal from source energy, coming into humanity and going like into the shadow to the gift back to the city. So it's like this looped storyline that keeps playing out in different ways, sometimes in very subtle ways, sometimes in very obvious ways. Sometimes we need the hindsight to see how obvious it was. And when it's playing out, sometimes it's not, it's a little bit more subtle. That is the gene keys, like in the entirety of the transmission. And your personal gene keys, which you will see on your gene keys profile, are the gene keys that carry additional potency for your personal unfolding story. All 64 gene keys have an influence over us. All of the 64 gene keys are telling the story of the collective. And then it's like there's personalized storylines happening within that overarching storyline as well. And when you see your gene keys profile that has 11 different spheres, the gene key that you have in each of them is the story that's playing out in that realm of your life that sphere is detailing. And that's a very brief introduction before we get deeper into feminine and masculine aspects. And before we move forward, I just want to take a moment to really pay reverence and respect to Richard Rudd, who is the first student and the founder of the Gene Keys. He wrote the Gene Keys book and all the material that I have used in my study and in preparation for this masterclass as well. I honor all that have contributed to this body of work, all whom have explored it, all who have guided me, and life itself. I pay reverence to all of that, and I really want to acknowledge the source of where this transmission comes from. Everything I'm about to go through is from Richard Rudd's transmission, so I really wanted to honor him. Here we have the hexagram of the first and the second gene keys. And within the 64 gene keys, the first and the second gene key is kind of like the beginning of the story code book. And then the 63rd and the 64th are the end. So those four gene keys, the first, second, 63rd, and 64th, are like the four cornerstones that have a great influence over everyone, regardless of if you have them active in your profile or not. So when we look at the beginning of the story code, the beginning of the book, the beginning of life, we have the first and the second gene key. The first is the divine masculine and the second is the divine feminine. And this first gene key is the primary code for all creative life in the universe. We're going to talk more about what's within this first gene key a little later as well as the second. And the second gene key, the divine feminine, is the primary code for directing all creative life within the universe. And this is where we get to play with and question the order of life. What comes first, the masculine or the feminine? Within the gene keys and within the I Ching hexagrams, like as it sits right now, the divine masculine is first. But there is strong evidence to suggest that this only took place when patriarchal power came into place, that it was actually the divine feminine that was the first gene key initially, or the first hexagram within the I Ching, and that they actually got switched around. And this connects in with the second gene key shadow of dislocation, that the feminine got put in the wrong place. It got put second in the gene keys, in the I Ching hexagrams, in life and in the way that we see life. And often, like our mindset, especially in Western culture, but in the world at large at the moment, we are conditioned to see the masculine as coming first and feminine second. And that has manifested in various ways. But it is suggested that the feminine always came first. The feminine is the being, the masculine is the becoming, and the masculine can only emerge from the feminine. We'll explore more of that later. And when we look at these, so these are the 6 lines. Every gene key or hexagram has these 6 lines. When it's a solid line, that is a masculine line. And when it's the broken line, that is the feminine line. For all of the 64, they have a different combination of these masculine and feminine lines, and that makes up, there's 64 different combinations that make up those 64 archetypes and 64 story codes. The first gene key is the only one that has all 6 masculine, and the second gene key is the only one that has all 6 feminine. And if you have the gene keys book, or even if you just like Google different gene keys, if you want to look at the ones you have in your profile, you'll see a hexagram picture like this, and it will show you which lines are feminine and which are masculine, and the breakup within the gene keys that you have. We're going to explore the ring of water and the ring of fire in this exploration, and the gene keys that are within those 2 codon rings. So the first, second, and we're also going to explore the 8th and the 14th. And these are like the prime feminine and masculine archetypes within the gene keys transmission. So I have 2 kind of like sections of writing on here, and these are straight from the gene keys. They're directly taken as like a transmission from the gene keys, and I think they just sum it up perfectly. So I'm going to read these, and then we'll dive in more. So first of all, like, what are codon rings? Codon rings are transgenetic chemical families that operate across entire gene pools, drawing certain people naturally together in pairs, groups, and ultimately forming societies. The codon rings are the biological machinery behind what ancients called karma. The manner in which they interlock forms the geometric unified field underpinning humanity. And as human DNA mutates in order to carry the higher frequencies that are coming with the great change, the 21 codon rings will bring humanity into the biological realization of its true nature and unity. Each codon ring is connected to a specific amino acid, chemical constituents used by the body to build proteins. So that is a very brief summary of what the codon rings are. The codon rings are an advanced part of the teachings or the transmission of the gene keys. So don't worry too much about really understanding what codon rings are. And I have this image. So this is what all of the codon rings look like. There are 21 different codon rings, and you can see they make up different genetic chemical groups that correspond to amino acids within our DNA. And we can see that this is one of the parts of how our gene keys is a mirror to the cosmos and to our DNA. Like internally, we are an imprinted mirror to the cosmos at the time that we were born, and we can see within the codon rings how gene keys correspond to our genes, to our genetics, to our DNA in different ways. And we have the ring of water, which is made up of the 2nd and the 8th gene key, and the ring of fire, which is made up of the 1st and the 14th gene key. And we can see here how it kind of forms an infinity symbol or a figure 8 in that genetic makeup. And this is the summary of the ring of water, this is directly from the gene keys as well. The ring of water forms a kind of eternal genetic knot with its polarity, the ring of fire. These 2 chemical families move us along the trajectory of our destinies, ensuring that our genetic material finds its opposite match. Even deep with the body, these chemical families set the primal blueprint for the balance of all opposing forces inside of us. It is in the crossfire of these 2 codon rings that the mystical figure 8 is forged within each of us. This eternal love knot deep within our planetary gene pool sets each man and each woman squarely on the human journey. There cannot be creation without polarity. There cannot be attraction without opposites and without polarity. And when we look at this ring of water and ring of fire, these are the core principles of feminine and masculine, of polarity, of creation, of co-creating, of pro-producing, of all of these things that bring new life into the world. And the feminine and the masculine are essential parts for new life to come into the world. So let's explore the ring of water, the divine feminine first. The ring of water, which is made up of the second and the eighth gene key, draw humans along their inevitable journey to self-realization. This is the great feminine ring made up of the 2' feminine gene keys in the human genome. So we're going to explore the second and the eighth gene key from the divine, which is the siddhi, the gift, and then the shadow, which is the distortion. When we look at the siddhi, so the 2 divine fractals of divine feminine from source, we have unity and exquisiteness. Unity is the second gene key, and unity as a siddhi is the essence of the divine feminine. It's the experience of awakening, which is the cornerstone of all siddhic states. It destroys duality because it unites, it unifies all opposites. It unifies all creatures, all beings, all opposites, everything together in a unified field. There is oneness. And this is where divine logic applies. Divine mathematics applies here. There is no number 2 because there is no duality in unity. There is only 1 and 3. And this is where there is oneness, there is one. And then when one oneness and another oneness come together, it's where 1 + 1 = 3, because there is the oneness that started plus the oneness that came, 1, 2, and then they merge together to create 3. And this is where, if we look like it in a practical sense of a couple, there is like the first person in the couple, the second person in the couple, that's 2 auric fields, and then their auric fields merge together to make a third auric field, which is the auric field of the relationship of the couple. So in this siddhi state, divine mathematics is where 1 + 1 always = 3. 2 cannot exist where unity exists. And in this siddhi, the oneness cannot be comprehended. It can only be lived. Like our mind, even though we can logically think, oh yeah, that makes sense, that like the relationship is the third, but our mind will never get on board with 1 + 1 = 3, agreeing at a logical level. This siddhi of unity is like the embrace of the cosmic mother. It is like that warm hug that is the home we are all returning to, and the home we are all longing for when we are in the gift and when we're in the shadow. It's like returning home. And this is a state of oneness and unity with all that is and with all that will be. That's the second siddhi of unity. The eighth siddhi of exquisiteness, this is the natural revelation of all siddhic states. Like exquisiteness is experienced when the divine essence begins to shine through the individual. The exquisiteness that comes when we embrace our individuality and when we embrace our siddhis and our gifts and shine all the siddhic states like through us in the material world and at a siddhic level as well. And this is like exquisiteness is like falling in love with your own pristine manifestation. You shine like a diamond, and all diamonds are exquisite in of themselves, and they're also incomparable. No diamond is the same as another. They are all completely unique. And that is the exquisiteness of shining in your own uniqueness. And uniqueness is also about being a drop in the ocean and being the ocean itself. Even though you are an individual, you are united with the whole as well, and you allow the light of the whole to shine through you as a drop, and you allow yourself to be part of the exquisiteness of the entire ocean itself. Exquisiteness as a siddhi, like its true nature is really wildness. And if we take the analogy of water, it's like the water the entire river or the entire ocean is always moving. It's always unchanging, like the entire river itself. But when we look at different drops of water, like it can be evolving and individualized at that level. People with this eighth gene key, they're not the leaders in the world. They are the examples. They are the people that are just so exquisite. Sometimes they're called like quirky or eccentric. They're like these big people that are the examples that inspire people to be more of themselves, not to mimic them or to imitate them, but to be themselves because they're inspired by other people being their self. And their mere presence, people in this city of exquisiteness, their presence acts as a light that frees and liberates other people to be themselves. And this exquisiteness is really the rush of existence itself, the rush of our uniqueness that we get to be in our human bodies. And this is a prime feminine quality in the world. So when we look at those cities, in their manifestation in the world, they become the gifts of orientation and style. And again, we're still with the second and the eighth gene key. So the city of unity manifested into action is the gift of orientation. And this gift is the gift of reorienting out to the divine archetypal pattern within your DNA. It is whenever you have become adrift or lost or looking the wrong way for that longing for home, it's the gift of being able to reorient, to look the right way, to take the step in the right direction for yourself and for others. And it's also this orientation into the wider context of life, which only enhances your own uniqueness. If we feel lost in space, then we lose touch with our context within the bigger picture and within ourselves as well. And this gift of orientation brings us into synchronicity and wider harmony within the collective and within the collective storylines. This gift of orientation also unifies matter and spirit. It amplifies our attractor field because it unifies the macrocosm with the microcosm, with what's happening outside of us, with what's happening inside of us. And that unifying of matter and spirit unifies what we desire with what we have, what is of service to us and what we are actually doing in the world. This gift of orientation is what governs the magnetic properties that are within chemical components of our DNA. And this gift of orientation is like the magnetic property of our inner guidance system. Like the magnetic forces inside of us are literally like unifying with the magnetic forces in the world to magnetize us towards where we need to go and to magnetize other people and things and opportunities magnetize towards us as well. And this is the gift of really being able to open your heart to life and receive all that comes your way. This is the gift that turns your gaze inwards as you're looking for home, so that you look inside of you instead of looking externally and outside of you. And as you reorient yourself, you reorient other people as well back to their home and the hug of the cosmic mother that we talked about with the city of unity. Then we come to the eighth gift of style. The eighth, so this is exquisiteness manifested into action, is the gift of style. And this is where we find a rebel with a cause, the rebel to actually be themselves, to have the style of their own individualized identity. And this gift of style brings something fresh into the world. It's the following and the flowering of your own unique rebellious spirit into the world, the natural flowering of your individuality. And this is the gift of being yourself without any concern for what other people think. And the concern for what other people think is usually what holds people back from being their individual self. This gift of style also really brings this cutting edge creative power into the world. Usually people people with this gift of style are very ahead of their time. And sometimes they're not really appreciated in their time because they're seen as too eccentric, too out there, too much for the collective comfort zone at any given time. And this gift of style is very grounded in spontaneity. Like they don't need to plan their creativity, they don't need to plan their style. They are in the moment and they are fully surrendered so that the creative process of life can move through them. And this gift of style also really mimics nature, and nature is full of genius and quantum leaps. And this gift of style really taps into that and manifests it in the world. This is the gift of free thinkers who are not consumed with fitting in. They only respond to being themselves in the spontaneous way that they do. And they are fulfilled by this deep sense of purpose simply by being who they are. And then we go into the distortion. The distortion of the second gene key is dislocation, and the distortion of the eighth gene key is mediocrity. So dislocation, this distortion of the second gene key, is about so we move from the city of unity, the gift of orientation, and the distortion or the shadow of dislocation. This is the sense of being lost, this sense of being lost in time and space, yet feeling this deep yearning for home, but being lost from home and not knowing where to go to return back home, but often looking anywhere external to find that sense of home or that sense of peace that home gives, or that sense of unity that home gives. It's this feeling of being cut off, lonely, afraid, like you have really lost your way in life or gone adrift. You've lost your sense of connection to life, to the bigger picture, to the purpose of life, even though you are never really lost and you have never lost connection. You feel and you think you can't sense your connection in this distortion and in this shadow frequency. There is this fear that you're just going the wrong direction, this sense of really seeing yourself as being separate to nature, missing opportunities because you're so out of sync with living life that is moving through you and right in front of you. And this can really lead to the path of materialism and selfishness, or this regimentation, into this forced control where you're trying to control the flow of life. And this dislocation is also the dislocation of the divine feminine. It's in the wrong place in our hearts and in our minds. It was always meant to come first, but it's been put second in throughout all facets of life. And if we look at this entire storyline of the second gene key, when we're in the distortion of dislocation within this shadow, the gift that is within this shadow is the gift of orientation, the gift that reorientates us home to where we are yearning for, that is actually inwards. It's about coming in to the feeling of love, to the feeling of unity, to the high frequency of the city of unity. And this is the storyline that we go through. And this distortion or this shadow has the sacred capacity to provoke us to look inwards, because we all, anyone that feels lost in life, eventually needs to get to a point where they're tired of looking outwards, so they eventually turn in. And that's the sacred purpose of this shadow of dislocation. It's dislocating you enough, provoking you enough, letting you struggle enough so that you surrender to actually going inwards and finding the gift to reorient yourself from going inwards to find the unity, the home, and the peace within yourself. Going to the eighth gene key, we have the shadow, the distortion of mediocrity. And this is really the fear of being different. And the fear of being different is what prevents you from really exploring the real adventure of life. And it keeps you living the same mediocre life as the masses without ever truly being yourself. It keeps you in this collective comfort zone. And it actually really ingrains this fear of success. And the fear of success is really rooted in your like this fear of what you know you will need to change, or how you know you will be different if you follow what you actually want to do. It's the fear of knowing that if I'm successful, I'm going to stand out and I'm going to be different, and a really deep-seated fear of that. And this distortion and shadow really drives you to just accept the stereotype that you have been assigned by outside authorities, and just to keep playing that role in life, even though it's not really who you feel that you are. The shadow prevents you from thinking for yourself and really keeps you just behaving like everyone else, to be a follower of whatever is going on in the world, and to live this really like wooden life that is either completely devoid of life force, or a really artificial life where you just create this illusion and facade of who you are and keep living out that. And when we look at this mediocrity, again, like this shadow is provoking you to find your own style, to be yourself, to feel into the fear of success, the fear of being different, and to realize the way that you are already different, and how you can embrace your individuality, how you can embrace and channel your exquisiteness, the way that the collective is meant to shine through you to illuminate who you are. And in that, you free others with your own light as well. But when you dim your light through pretending to be mediocre, you just live in this like wooden or artificial life. So they are the two gene keys, the second and the eighth, within this ring of water, the divine feminine. And we can see that these divine feminine aspects are really about like the unity, the cosmic unifying energy of everything, and the exquisiteness of all of that is in the unifying, and that is in each individualized drop as well, which is really beautiful. And we'll come back to that after we explore the ring of fire. So the ring of fire is the first and the 14th gene key. And when the inner divine fire is released in your DNA, you become capable of miraculous power. And this really represents the energetic gem at the heart of creation and the purpose of existence itself, to create that which is endlessly beautiful and to imbue it with your awareness that is endless beauty. When your fire is burning, everyone wants to gather around you. This is the ring of fire. And we're going to talk about the first and the 14th gene key. At the Siddhic level, the first gene key has the city of beauty, and the 14th has the city of bounteousness. The first city of beauty is like the light in all that exists. It's the light that shines through all human awareness to make everything we see beauty and beautiful. Beauty is the reason for life. The beauty is within all that is created and all that is alive and all that is within life. And life is the reason for beauty. Life gives rise to creation and to beauty. Beauty lies in the unity of all. This is its connection to the second gene key. And true beauty is emptiness within the void, within the nothingness, which we'll talk a bit more when we go into the gift and the shadow. And beauty is really the expression of unity within human form. It's the expression of like, this is where there's connections and paradoxes and contradictions as well, that the beauty emerges from the unity. Like the divine masculine is the becoming of the divine feminine. Like the divine feminine is unity, and the divine masculine needs to be born out of the unity. The feminine is the being, the masculine is the becoming. And the masculine has the drive to evolve, to change, to grow, to make beauty, to create. But the feminine has already become, the feminine has already united all of those things. So the feminine has no urge to evolve, no urge to create, because it has already unified all that is. And the masculine needs to come out to then create and then come back into unity. So for the 14th gene key, we have the city of bounteousness. And this is the core archetype of power as an individual, like the power that is needed when bringing creation into the world. It is the ultimate legacy of what it means to be human, to create, to have that bounteous energy to create in the world. It's the ability to create abundance in every direction at every level of consciousness. And it is the driving force of humanity to evolve. And within this city frequency, this citic frequency of bounteousness, anyone that is embodying this citic frequency, their every word, thought, deed all reaches the entire morphogenetic field and pushes the whole of humanity into a new direction. It has this very powerful pushing energy for humanity to evolve. The morphogenetic field are these energetic grids that connect all creatures and particles of matter at a subatomic level. And when we connect into the morphogenic field, we're connecting into the collective. And this city of bounteousness like has a very powerful energy. Like everything they do, say, think goes directly into the morphogenic field for others to tap into and to create from their bounteousness, their unbound energy. The manifestation, those cities in action, come into the gifts of freshness and competence. The first gene key with the gift of freshness is like the energetic thrust. It is the thrust to bring something out of the void and bring something fresh and new into the world. It's where out of the darkness, this light suddenly emerges. This gift of freshness is about aliveness, expressiveness. It is life injecting, creating this unpredictable creative power because it can only emerge from the dark, from the void, from the nothingness, from the emptiness. And in this gift of freshness, there is this really grounded trust and sense of timing. It's this knowing that creativity cannot be forced, but when it comes, you ignite this fire of freshness that everyone gathers around. The gift of competence with the 14th gene key is like competence is the quality that accompanies any person doing what they love. And this gift of competence and the whole 14th gene key is really the archetype that influences all humans in the world to have this need to work. And work isn't what we kind of like, work within the gene keys framework doesn't have the negative connotation. Working is not necessarily what you're doing for money, but we all have this drive to want to work, to contribute to the world in service within some way. And this 14th gift like has this gift of competence that whenever they're doing something they love, they have very high level of competence. It carries the qualities of efficiency, enthusiasm, flair, and flexibility. The ability to think both logically and laterally, and to be this self-adjusting, like it's a self-adjusting gift of creating and receiving, of thinking in different ways, of doing things in different ways to what is needed to be in their highest competence within the moment. And this gift of competence is also really the binding force that brings cohesion into different groups of people to drive the force of like the team spirit to create even more power and competence within the group and whatever the group is bringing to life. It creates this very powerful magnetic field that draws in the right support, material wealth, all that is needed to elevate their competence and the creation that is coming into the world. And this gift radiates confidence and assuredness and great flexibility. They are competent at whatever they are doing when it is something that they love doing. The distortion of this first and 14th gene key, the distortion of the first gene key is entropy. And entropy is a disorder or unavailability of energy. It's when you enter the black hole, and in that you have this sense of gloom and numbness because you're in the darkness, you're in the black hole, and there isn't anything inherently wrong with being in the void or the black hole or the darkness, but entropy is kind of what the mind produces with this fear that you will never create again, that there is just nothingness and emptiness, and assigning like this negative connotation to that instead of resting in the void or resting in the pause and resting in the break. It is the mental turmoil in the fear that nothing new will ever emerge within the black hole. And it's a real lack of trust. And this can really result in this depressive mental collapse or this like frenetic urge to just escape the black hole and to force something creative into the world that carries no potency or power. The distortion is the shadow of compromise for the 14th gene key. And compromise is really living without a sense of personal freedom. It's the lack of imagination and inability to believe in the power of your own uniqueness and your own individuality. And it's like compromising is about giving up early or never even getting off the ground, having your dreams really stomped out of you. So you just compromise to whatever other people are telling you or whatever is right in front of you without working to your dreams. It's settling for second best or even third or fourth best at times, so that you never really enjoy what you're doing in life. And if you don't, for people with this 14th gene key, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you can never excel at doing it. You can never enter that gift of competence. Loving what you're doing needs to be a cornerstone for anyone with this 14th gene key, but this gene key influences the collective, so that is the same to be said for everyone as well. And this is about compromising your spirit, not necessarily your actions. And compromising in your spirit means that you can take actions that are stepping stones towards something that you inevitably or invariably want to be doing. And that is not a compromise in and of itself. It's your stepping stone. But the compromise is when you're settling for something. You're doing something just because you, for whatever reason, you're compromising against the thing that you actually want to do, whether it's you don't think that you'll ever get the resources, you don't think you'll be capable, whatever reason is driving you to that compromise. And this is what makes you a follower in life rather than being a creator and a leader, and to have the competence that you are actually really capable of when you're doing something that you do enjoy. And this shadow of compromise is where prosperity is really distorted and prosperity decays. And this makes you like, this shadow can lead you to being very impotent, where you're just dominated by your fear and you feel powerless in everything about your life, or you feel enslaved and you very reactively try to prove yourself in ways that don't actually matter to you and that you don't even enjoy at all. So when we look at these gene keys, the first and the 14th, that are within this ring of fire, that are our masculine archetypes, they're all about creativity, about power, about evolving, and about bringing things into the world. It's the becoming, it's the journey, like it's the bringing new life into the world. Whereas when we look at the feminine of the 2nd and the 8th gene key, like the ring of water, it's all about being, flowing, shining as you are, uniting into the wholeness, like very different energies. So when we look at this dance between the feminine and the masculine, it's always like the unity of the feminine, the masculine being born from the feminine, going out on its story of evolution, and then coming home to the feminine. It's the being of the feminine and the becoming of the masculine. And it's a paradox and it's a journey and it's a dance when we look at it. And when we look at these energies within ourselves, we can always be in the unity within ourselves with the feminine, with unity within life, with nature, within the love of like the cosmic mother within ourselves. And we can look at these masculine influences to evolve and to create, to become something in the world, to use our power and competence. But if we are too, when it comes into like when we are actually living in the world as a in matter, like in the 3D world as a human, if we lean too far into either the feminine or the masculine, we will always have this massive pendulum swing to the other side at some stage, because in the material world, like, life is always working to balance, to harmony. And in harmony, the masculine and the feminine are dancing like in this flow together. The masculine is holding the structure and the power and the systems and all of those things for the feminine to be in, to flow in. And if we are too far in the feminine, we'll get to a point where we have this big swing, and too far into the masculine, and then we'll have this big swing back into the feminine. You may find this like with periods of like resting, doing a lot of work, feeling burnt out, or resting, feeling bored, want to do something, doing too much, feeling burnt out, going back. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing of going through these periods of resting and creating, but look at your energy, your mindset, your shadows, and all of these things that are coming up within that journey, and what is happening within your dance of feminine and masculine. Are you allowing yourself to create, to be in your power, to be in your competence, and in all of these things, and in your like bringing freshness and creativity in the world as well? And are you letting yourself simply be, to be the exquisite thing that you are, in unity with all of life as well? So I hope you've enjoyed this exploration of the gene keys that hold these codes for the divine feminine and the divine masculine within the gene keys. These 4 gene keys have an influence on all of us. And if you have them active in your profile, there is extra potency for you within these as well, especially looking at it in connection, like in the context of the sphere that it's in, and in the realm of your life that this is the story code for you in. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go through some ways that you can work with me if you want to keep exploring the gene keys with me as your guide. So the first one is my new program, Rise. This is kind of like a hybrid between a group program and a mastermind. It is a 5-week group immersion into the codes of your gene keys. It's all about the cosmic coding of your higher self, rising into the imprint of your individuality. And you can see, like in this imagery, there are the depths of your roots, and you're rising into your higher nature, into the cycles that come, and the shedding that come with like the lunar cycle, the snake. It's all symbolic there. What is included in this 5-week experience is a weekly call. They will be over Zoom. These calls will be up to 90 minutes. There will be a training component for each of the 5 weeks. We're going to go through a different sphere each week. The spheres we're going to cover are along the pathway of individuality. So we have purpose, attraction, SQ, Pearl, and life's work. So for each of the 5 weeks, we're going to explore elements within those spheres, within the context of your individuality, and bringing your full individual nature into the world, and integrating that into your being and becoming, your being and your work and your service and all of those things. So within each of those weekly calls, there will be a training transmission, Q&A, there will be personal spotlight guidance for each person, and an exploration for your active gene key. So everyone in the group will explore your gene key within that sphere in these calls as well. There will be an open Voxer chat. There will be unlimited guidance, unlimited voice message and text message support within Voxer to integrate and celebrate between our calls for the entire 5 weeks. You'll also get an audio recording exploring your active gene key for each of the 5 spheres that we cover. So for the 5 gene keys that you will have active within what we're covering, you'll get an audio recording from me that will go into the full story code, like the full detail and depth of that gene key, along with the line number that you have there within the context of the sphere that it's in. So connecting it all together. That will be really fun. Each audio will probably go for like 10 to 15 minutes, sometimes longer if I get onto a big riff. Sometimes they do stretch out. And you'll also receive like prompts and practices and play work for deeper integration as we go through these 5 weeks. And this is really like a catalyst point. This is where it'll be a deep, like intensive period to absorb, to integrate, like to go into this really amplified portal and field. And then all of this will just keep absorbing and integrating at deeper levels as you move forward with what we will cover within these 5 weeks. The investment is 555 Australian dollars, and it's open to up to 5 women for this first round. So if you want to get out on this, there is no sales page yet, but you can reach out to me and I can send you the payment link. Ask me any of your questions. We start in 2 weeks on the 10th of June, which is a Friday. So message me if you have any questions about that. And if you want personal one-on-one guidance, so not in the group setting like Rise will be, some options that I have is if you want to deep dive into your full profile, it's $1,400. And that includes, like, it's broken up into 3 sections for the 3 sequences, the activation, the Venus, and the Pearl. You'll get an audio deep dive for each of them. They go up to like 40 to 50 minutes each. You also get full live calls for your integration, guidance, coaching, questions, all of those things. Plus, you get unlimited message support for those 4 weeks. So that will be a really beautiful 4-week intensive. And if you want to stretch that out a little, we can, to bring in more spaciousness, we can talk about that as well. Or I have deep dive options for each like individual sequence. I recommend starting with the activation sequence if you're new to the Gene Keys. That the activation sequence is $333, and then the Venus and the Pearl are $555 each. You can have a look on my website for the details on each of these sequences, or reach out to me. And if you just wanted to take a lighter first step in, especially if you are completely new to the Gene Keys, I have live 35-minute calls that are $77, where it's just a much more lighter and gentle approach, where we're just live together, diving into the elements that are really relevant to whatever is happening in your life and for the purpose of the intention that you have. So thank you so much for being here. Reach out to me if you want to explore working together. I would love to be your guide through the Gene Keys. I hope you have enjoyed this exploration.